I caught my landlord pretending to fix wiring in my bedroom and later found the same model camera on Amazon in his name. I was holding the Amazon receipt with my landlord's name on it when Detective Laura Kensington walked into the interrogation room. The paper felt like it was burning through my fingers. For 3 weeks, I'd been sleeping, changing clothes, living my entire private life under surveillance, and the man who'd been watching had a key to my apartment. "Mr. Lawson," she said, setting down a thick manila folder, "we've confirmed the serial numbers match. The camera we found in your bedroom was purchased on his account 18 days ago. My name is Alex Lawson, and I'm a 28-year-old graphic designer who moved to Portland 6 months ago for a fresh start after a rough breakup." I'd been searching for an affordable place for weeks when I found the listing, a converted attic apartment in a beautiful Victorian house in the Hawthorne district, hardwood floors, skylights, and, here's the kicker, utilities included. The landlord, Richard Brennan, seemed perfect during the walkthrough. Mid-50s, friendly smile, told me about how he'd inherited the house from his parents and converted the top floor into a rental to help with property taxes. He mentioned he was recently divorced, said he understood how rough transitions could be. I signed the lease that afternoon. Looking back now, every kind word feels contaminated, like he was studying me the whole time, deciding if I was the right victim. The first month was uneventful. Richard lived on the ground floor with what seemed like minimal interaction. I'd see him occasionally in the shared hallway, we'd exchange pleasantries, and that was it. The apartment was exactly what I needed: quiet, private, affordable. I worked from home most days, built my freelance client base back up, tried to piece together something resembling a normal life. Then, on a Thursday in late September, everything started to unravel. I came home around 6 in the evening to find a note slipped under my door. "Alex, noticed some flickering in your bedroom lights. We'll need to check the wiring this week. We'll let you know when. Richard." The note seemed reasonable enough. The bedroom lights had been acting weird, dimming occasionally without explanation. I texted him back saying that was fine, just give me a heads up before coming up. 2 days later, on Saturday morning, I was at a coffee shop working on a logo design when my phone buzzed. "Richard, heading up to check the wiring now if that's okay. Should only take 30 minutes. I replied, confirming it was fine and didn't think much of it. I got home around 3 that afternoon. Everything looked normal. The lights worked fine. I noticed the small access panel near the ceiling vent was slightly askew, like it had been opened and closed, but I figured that was from whatever electrical work he'd done. What I didn't notice, what I wouldn't notice for another 2.5 weeks, was the tiny lens positioned in the decorative molding above my bed, angled perfectly to capture the entire room. I started feeling watched about a week later. It's hard to describe the sensation without sounding paranoid, but you know that prickling feeling on the back of your neck when someone's staring at you? I started getting that in my own bedroom. At first, I dismissed it as stress or lingering anxiety from the breakup. I'd been in therapy working through trust issues. Maybe I was projecting, but the feeling persisted and intensified. I'd be changing clothes and suddenly feel exposed. I'd be on my laptop in bed and feel the urge to angle the screen away from what? Nothing was there. I checked the windows. Second floor, no sightlines from neighboring buildings. I examined the walls, the vents, even the smoke detector. Nothing seemed out of place. Then Richard started acting differently. I'd run into him in the hallway more frequently, always when I was heading out or coming home, like he knew my schedule. He'd ask specific questions. "How's the freelance work going? Late night last night?" How did he know I'd worked late? Had he heard me? The walls weren't that thin. "New client on the East Coast?" he asked once. I'd never mentioned client locations to him. When I asked how he knew that, he laughed it off, said he just assumed from my hours. But my hours varied. I didn't have a pattern. Each interaction left me with this greasy, uncomfortable feeling that I couldn't articulate. The second electrical issue happened 3 weeks after the first. Another note under my door. "Alex, need to check the outlet near your desk. Might be a short. We'll come by Thursday around 2 p.m. Thursday, I made sure I was home. I wanted to watch him work, see what he was actually doing. He arrived exactly at 2, carrying a toolbox and wearing a pleasant smile. "Should be quick," he said, kneeling by the outlet near my desk. I stood in the doorway, watching. He unscrewed the outlet cover, poked around with a voltage tester, checked the connections. Everything seemed legitimate. Then he glanced up at the bookshelf beside my desk, and I swear I saw something flicker across his face. Satisfaction, maybe, or confirmation. "All good," he announced, standing up. "Just a loose connection. Should be fine now." After he left, I examined that outlet myself. I'm not an electrician, but I know enough to recognize that the connections looked fine. Not recently disturbed, not loose. I pulled out my phone and started Googling. Landlord making up repairs. Tenant surveillance. Hidden cameras in rentals. The search results made my stomach drop. Forum after forum of similar stories. Landlords creating excuses to enter units, installing cameras, violating privacy. One article detailed how a woman in Seattle discovered her landlord had been recording her for 8 months. The cameras were tiny, disguised as screws or smoke detectors, or tucked into decorative elements. My hands started shaking as I read. I began searching my apartment systematically that night. I checked every smoke detector, every vent cover, every unusual screw or fixture. I downloaded apps that claimed to detect hidden cameras by finding lens reflections or wireless signals. I spent 4 hours going over every inch of that bedroom. Nothing. But the feeling wouldn't go away. I started changing clothes in the bathroom with the door locked. I angled my laptop screen away from the walls. I felt insane, paranoid, like I was losing my grip on reality. My therapist, Dr. Nina Holloway, noticed the shift in our next session. She's been practicing for 15 years, specializes in trauma and anxiety, and she's usually pretty good at reading when I'm spiraling versus when something legitimate is wrong. "You seem more anxious than usual," she observed during our Wednesday session. I tried to explain the feeling, the odd encounters with Richard, the unnecessary repairs. Even as I spoke, I heard how it sounded. Paranoid conspiracy thinking, classic anxiety pattern. "Doctor," Holloway listened carefully, then asked a question that stopped me. "Have you considered that your instincts might be protecting you? Not everything that feels like paranoia is irrational fear." She suggested documenting everything: dates, times, interactions, anything that felt off. "Trust isn't about dismissing your gut," she said. "It's about gathering information to verify what your gut is telling you." So I started documenting. I created a locked note on my phone with a timeline. September 23rd, first electrical issue, came home to note about wiring. September 25th, Richard accessed apartment, I wasn't home. October 2nd, started feeling watched in bedroom. October 8th, Richard knew about late work night, no explanation how. October 15th, second electrical issue, outlet by desk. I started varying my routine, coming home at different times, working from coffee shops more often. And that's when I noticed Richard's behavior shift. He started leaving more notes. "Saw you weren't home yesterday. Wanted to check the furnace while you were out. Need to inspect the attic crawl space above your unit. Always reasons to access my space, always when I wasn't there or with minimal notice." The breakthrough came on a Wednesday evening in late October. I was in my bedroom, about to change for a workout, when my phone died. I plugged it in and walked to the kitchen to grab water while it charged. When I came back 5 minutes later, I had a text from an unknown number. "Nice apartment." Just those 2 words. My blood went cold. I responded, "Who is this?" No reply. I checked the number, local Portland area code, but when I called it went straight to a disconnected message. I screenshotted the text and added it to my documentation. That night, I barely slept. I kept the lights on, changed in the bathroom, felt like the walls were closing in. The next day, I did something that would change everything. I was at the electronics store buying a replacement phone charger when I walked past the security camera section. On a whim, I picked up an RF signal detector, a device that scans for wireless transmissions from hidden cameras or bugs. It was $85, way more than I wanted to spend, but I bought it anyway. That evening, I came home and locked my door. I turned on the detector and started scanning my bedroom. Nothing at first. I moved slowly, methodically, sweeping the device across walls, furniture, fixtures. When I aimed it at the decorative molding above my bed, the detector went haywire. Lights flashing, alarm beeping. There was a wireless signal transmitting from that molding. I dragged my desk chair over and climbed up to examine the molding. At first, I couldn't see anything wrong. Then I noticed it. A tiny hole in the wood, barely visible, positioned at an angle. I ran my finger along the edge and felt something, a small hard lens. My entire body went numb. I stood on that chair for what felt like an eternity, staring at this thing embedded in my wall. I thought about every moment I'd spent in that room, every time I'd changed clothes, every phone call, every vulnerable moment. My hands started shaking so hard I had to climb down before I fell. I wanted to rip it out of the wall immediately, destroy it, burn the whole building down. But some rational part of my brain kicked in. Evidence. I needed to leave it there and document everything. I grabbed my phone and took photos. Dozens of them, from every angle. The lens in the molding. The RF detector showing the signal. The view from the camera's perspective. Then I went to my laptop and started researching. I needed to find out what kind of camera this was, who made it, where it could be purchased. I spent 3 hours going through online catalogs of hidden cameras. Finally, I found it. A Wi-Fi-enabled micro camera, designed to be mounted in small spaces, streams video to a connected device. It was sold on Amazon, among other retailers. Here's where it gets worse. This type of camera required a Wi-Fi connection and an account to access the feed, which meant Richard wasn't just recording me, he was watching me live, whenever he wanted, from his phone or computer. The thought made me physically ill. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. When I came back out, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Richard. I wasn't going to tip him off that I knew. I was going to gather evidence, contact the police, and end this the right way. Friday morning, I called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation. The dispatcher took my information and said she'd have an officer contact me. 6 hours later, Detective Laura Kensington called. She's a 17-year veteran with the Portland Police Bureau, works primarily on property crimes and privacy violations. We arranged to meet Saturday afternoon at the station. I brought everything: my documentation timeline, the photos, the RF detector, printouts of the camera model from Amazon. Detective Kensington listened carefully, took notes, asked detailed questions about Richard's access to the property and the timeline of events. "This is enough for a warrant," she said after reviewing everything. "But we need to build the strongest case possible. I'm going to need you to do something difficult. Leave that camera where it is for a few more days while we investigate. Can you do that?" I asked if I could stay somewhere else. She said that would actually be better. "We need to establish the pattern of surveillance. If you're not home, but the camera's still active, it shows intent." She assigned a case number, had me sign a formal complaint, and told me she'd be in touch within 48 hours. I stayed at my friend Jordan Whitmore's apartment that weekend. Jordan's a software engineer I'd known since college, one of the few people I trusted completely. I didn't tell him all the details, just said I needed space while dealing with some apartment issues. Sunday evening, Detective Kensington called with an update. They'd pulled Richard Brennan's record, no prior arrests, but 2 complaints from previous tenants that never went anywhere. Both complaints alleged landlord harassment, but lacked physical evidence. The detective's voice hardened when she told me this. "You're not the first person he's targeted. You're just the first one with proof." Monday morning, Detective Kensington served a search warrant at Richard's residence. I wasn't there. She told me to stay at Jordan's until she gave the all-clear. The search took 4 hours. What they found made my skin crawl. The camera feed was being recorded to Richard's personal computer in his home office. He had files labeled with dates, organized by tenant. My files dated back to the day after I moved in, before the first electrical issue. But there was more. They found purchase records on his Amazon account, not just for my camera, but for 3 others. 2 were installed in previous tenants' apartments and had been removed before they moved out. The 3rd was sitting in a drawer, unused, still in its packaging. They also found a notebook. Richard had been keeping written notes about his tenants' routines, habits, schedules. My section included observations like, usually changes clothes around 8 p.m. and works late on Wednesdays. Reading the police report later made me feel violated in ways I still can't fully articulate. This wasn't just surveillance. This was obsession, documentation, pattern analysis. Detective Kensington told me the DA was pursuing multiple charges: invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, voyeurism. Each count carried potential prison time. Richard was arrested Monday afternoon. I got the call from Detective Kensington while I was still at Jordan's. "He's in custody. You're safe." Those 3 words broke something open in me. I sat on Jordan's couch and cried for the first time since discovering the camera. Jordan finally asked what was actually going on, and I told him everything. He went pale, then angry, then called his lawyer girlfriend to ask about tenant rights and criminal prosecution. That night was the first time in weeks I slept more than 3 hours. The arraignment happened on Wednesday. I didn't attend, but Detective Kensington called me afterward with the details. Richard pleaded not guilty, was released on bail with a restraining order keeping him away from me and the property. The judge ordered he couldn't access the building except to meet with investigators. His lawyer tried to argue the search was invalid, but the judge shut it down fast. The warrant was solid. The evidence was overwhelming. Preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks out. I went back to my apartment that Thursday with Detective Kensington and a crime scene technician named Marcus Thornhill. They'd already removed the camera as evidence, but Thornhill wanted to do a complete sweep to make sure there were no other devices. He found nothing else, but he walked me through how to spot hidden cameras, what to look for, how to check for wireless signals. "You did everything right," he told me. "A lot of victims never find the cameras. They just live with that feeling and think they're crazy." I started the process of breaking my lease. Oregon law allows tenants to terminate leases immediately in cases of landlord harassment or illegal activity. My lawyer, Robert Garrison, handled the paperwork. Garrison's been practicing tenant law for 23 years, knows every angle of the landlord-tenant code. He also filed a civil suit against Richard for emotional distress, invasion of privacy, and breach of contract. "We're going to make sure he never does this to anyone else," Garrison promised. "If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this." The preliminary hearing revealed even more disturbing details. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Patricia Kowalski, presented the evidence methodically. Kowalski has a 92% conviction rate on privacy crime cases and a reputation for thoroughness. She showed the court the Amazon purchase records, the video files organized by date, the written notebook with observations. Then she introduced something I hadn't known about: metadata. Every video file had embedded metadata showing when it was accessed, how many times, and from what device. Richard had watched footage of me an average of 4 times per day, sometimes at 2 in the morning, sometimes while I was home, in real time. The defense attorney tried to argue that Richard was just a concerned landlord monitoring his property for security purposes. Ada Kowalski destroyed that argument in 30 seconds. "Security cameras are installed in common areas with tenant notification, Your Honor, not hidden in private bedrooms focused on beds. This is voyeurism, pure and simple." The judge agreed. Richard was ordered to remain under house arrest with an ankle monitor until trial. The prosecution was pursuing enhanced charges due to the multiple victims. My civil case moved forward in parallel. During discovery, Garrison uncovered financial records showing Richard had been supplementing his income by selling surveillance footage online. Not my footage specifically, that they could prove, but footage from other tenants and other properties he owned. He had a small portfolio of rental units across Portland. and evidence suggested he'd installed cameras in at least 5 of them over the past 8 years. The scope of his operation was staggering. Garrison estimated dozens of victims, most of whom had moved away and never knew they were recorded. The breakthrough in my case came from an unexpected source. One of Richard's ex-tenants, a woman named Catherine Reynolds, read about the arrest in the local news. She contacted Detective Kensington with her own story. Catherine had rented from Richard 3 years earlier, had complained about him entering her unit without notice, felt uncomfortable but couldn't prove anything. She'd moved out after 6 months, wrote off the whole experience as a bad landlord situation. Now, knowing what she knew, she wanted to testify. Kensington connected her with ADA Kowalski, and Catherine's testimony became crucial corroboration of a pattern. The trial started in early January. I sat in the courtroom every day, listening to forensic analysts explain the camera technology, watching Richard's defense crumble under the weight of evidence. His attorney tried to paint him as a lonely, divorced man who made poor decisions, but the prosecution wasn't buying it. They called Dr. Sophie Brennan, a psychologist specializing in criminal behavior, who testified about the calculated nature of the surveillance. Dr. Brennan, who has 30 years of experience and has consulted on over 200 criminal cases, explained that this wasn't impulsive behavior. It was planned, methodical, and showed sophisticated understanding of both technology and tenant vulnerability. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts: 3 counts of invasion of privacy, 2 counts of illegal surveillance, 1 count of voyeurism. Sentencing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. I allowed myself to feel relief for the first time in months. Richard's face when the verdict was read showed something I'd never seen from him before: genuine fear. The mask of the friendly landlord had finally, completely shattered. The sentencing hearing was packed. Catherine Reynolds was there, along with 2 other former tenants who'd come forward after seeing news coverage. A D.A. Kowalski presented victim impact statements from all of us. I'd written mine carefully, working with Dr. Holloway to articulate the psychological damage without sounding vindictive. I talked about the violation, the paranoia, the way I still checked hotel rooms for cameras whenever I traveled, the way I couldn't fully relax in private spaces anymore. Judge Thomas Whitfield, a former prosecutor with 28 years on the bench, listened to everything before pronouncing sentence. "Mr. Brennan," Judge Whitfield said, looking directly at Richard, "you systematically violated the privacy and safety of individuals who trusted you with their homes. You turned their most private spaces into your personal entertainment. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of poor judgment. This was a calculated operation spanning years. The court sentences you to 8 years in state prison with 3 years supervised release. You are also ordered to pay restitution to each victim, including Mr. Lawson's full moving and therapy costs. Additionally, you are permanently barred from owning or managing rental properties in the state of Oregon." 8 years. It wasn't forever, but it was something. Richard was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, and I felt something loosen in my chest that had been clenched tight for months. Outside the courthouse, Detective Kensington found me on the steps. "You did good, Alex. Most victims never get this kind of resolution." I thanked her, told her I couldn't have done it without her thorough investigation. "Just doing my job," she said. "But you trusted your instincts when everyone else might have called you paranoid. That took courage." The civil case settled 2 months later. Robert Garrison negotiated a payment of $78,000, covering my moving costs, therapy expenses, lost work from the stress, and punitive damages. Richard's rental properties were seized to pay the settlement and restitution to other victims. The money helped, but it wasn't really about the money. It was about the public record, the acknowledgement that what happened was real and wrong and criminal. I moved to a different neighborhood, a building managed by a professional property management company with clear policies and regulations. I installed my own security system, including motion sensors that alert me to any entry attempts. I still see Dr. Holloway weekly, working through the layers of violation and rebuilding my sense of safety. She tells me recovery isn't linear, and she's right. Some days I'm fine. Some days I check my apartment 3 times before leaving for cameras I know aren't there. The story broke in the local news, then got picked up by state media, then went semi-viral on social media. My name was kept confidential in most coverage, but the story itself resonated. People shared their own experiences with landlord harassment, boundary violations, the feeling of being watched. The Portland Housing Bureau launched an investigation into landlord surveillance practices and proposed new regulations requiring disclosure of any surveillance equipment on rental properties. Richard's case became the catalyst for actual policy change. Jordan checked in on me constantly during the aftermath, helped me move, sat with me during the bad nights when I couldn't sleep. "You literally caught a predator," he said once. "That's not paranoia. That's being smart enough to listen when something felt wrong." His validation meant more than I can express. When you've spent weeks thinking you're losing your mind, having someone confirm your reality is sanity-saving. I eventually told my ex about what happened. We'd been broken up for over a year by then, but I needed her to know that some of my behavior during our relationship, the anxiety, the trust issues, had roots deeper than our problems. She was horrified, apologized for the times she'd dismissed my concerns as overthinking. It didn't fix our relationship, but it gave us both some closure and understanding. The thing about violation like this is, it changes how you see the world. I can't look at smoke detectors, air vents, or decorative molding the same way. I'm more careful about privacy, more aware of digital footprints and surveillance capitalism. Some people might call that paranoia, but I call it educated caution. I learned that privacy isn't just a legal concept, it's a fundamental need, and when it's stripped away, it damages something essential in how you relate to your own space and body. Richard will be eligible for parole in 6 years. I'll be 34. I've already written my letter to the parole board for when that time comes, detailing why he shouldn't be released early. Detective Kensington said she'd do the same. So would Catherine Reynolds and the other victims. We've created a network, a support system, a wall of testimony that says, this person causes harm and should not be released until he's served his full sentence. The Amazon receipt that started it all, the one with Richard's name and the camera purchase, is filed with the court records now. Evidence Exhibit J7. Sometimes I think about how close I came to never finding it, to living under surveillance indefinitely, to dismissing my instincts as anxiety. The only reason I found the camera was because I trusted that gnawing feeling that something was wrong, even when it made me feel crazy. Dr. Holloway calls it therapeutic vindication. When your worst fears are proven real, and the validation allows you to process trauma without gaslighting yourself. You weren't paranoid, she reminds me in sessions. You were being watched. Your nervous system knew something your conscious mind couldn't prove yet. That's intuition, not illness. I've started speaking at tenant rights workshops, sharing my story to help others recognize warning signs. The most common question I get is, how did you know? And I tell them the truth. I didn't know. I suspected. I felt. I paid attention to details that seemed small but formed a pattern. And when I had enough to act on, I documented everything and brought in professionals. You don't have to be certain to protect yourself. You just have to be brave enough to investigate when something feels wrong. The second most common question, do you regret moving into that apartment? It's complicated. I regret the violation, the months of surveillance, the way it's changed how I navigate private spaces. But I don't regret finding the camera, pursuing justice, becoming someone who fought back instead of disappearing quietly. Richard targeted me because he thought I'd be easy prey. Someone new to the city, living alone, no local support network. He thought wrong. Some nights I still wake up feeling watched. I do my routine, check the apartment, confirm the security system is armed, remind myself that I'm safe. Then I open the Notes app on my phone and read the final entry in my documentation timeline. Richard Brennan sentenced to 8 years in prison. Justice served. It helps more than you'd think, having that concrete endpoint written down. The story has a resolution. The bad guy faced consequences. I survived. If you're reading this and something feels off in your living situation, trust it. Document it. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. You're potentially protecting yourself from someone who's banking on you dismissing your own instincts. Install that RF detector. Take those photos, call that detective. The violation is real, but so is your ability to fight back. Richard Brennan thought he could watch me without consequences. He was wrong, and he'll have 8 years in a 6x8 cell to think about why that was a miscalculation. Meanwhile, I'm rebuilding my life, one secure, private, camera-free day at a time. The landlord who tried to steal my privacy lost everything: his freedom, his property, his reputation, even his name. Everyone in Portland's rental community knows what Richard Brennan did. His legacy isn't the Victorian house he inherited or the business he built. It's being a registered sex offender whose mugshot comes up first when you search his name. That's justice. Not perfect, not complete, but real. And sometimes, real is enough. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.